So this surah gets its name from the very last word appearing here, which is Al Ma'un. Al Ma'un has got various connotations. One is it's a basic utensil or something like a plate. It also refers to something very small and insignificant in terms of aid or neighborly needs that you give to somebody else and that you look after them in that way. And other names that this surah has got is to do with alms or charity or common kindnesses or neighborly needs. So this is essentially what the meaning of this surah is. And to look at it perhaps in a clearer way, it's short, seven ayah. It's generally regarded as a Makki surah, although if you look at the meaning of it, it contains both Makki meaning in the first three verses or first three ayah, and then the remaining four verses were applicable when Salah was prescribed and the Hijrah had occurred and people moved to Medina and started praying in congregation. So the first ayah says, have you seen the one who denies? Kadhaba is to deny or to deny. And ad-din, we've heard in Surah Al-Fatiha before, Maliki Yawmiddin, master of the day of judgment or the day of reckoning or the day of paying back at the end or the day of atonement. So the question here is, Allah is like teaching us, have you, and it's addressed to the Prophet, but it's addressed to us generally speaking, have you seen the one who denies all these things, whether it's the religion of Islam or by implication also the day of judgment and the day of atonement and reckoning? Then it goes on, it's that person, so the person that's described in the first ayah is described secondly saying, فَذَلِكَ الَّذِي يَدُّءُ الْيَتِيمَ, and one of his characteristics are that he da'a means to repulse or to push back or to sort of make like that person doesn't exist. The yatim is the orphan in the society. And a yatim, in terms of this definition, is anybody who doesn't have both parents at the age of puberty. So anything under 10 and a person doesn't have a mother and father is regarded as an orphan or a yatim. So you find some people that deny the religion or deny the day of judgment doing this one abhorrent act, which is pushing aside the orphan, not treating him or her well. The second characteristic is وَلَا يَحُدُّ عَلَى طَعَامِ الْمِسْكِينِ. يَحُدُّ means to encourage. So la yahudu means does not encourage the ta'amil miskin. Ta'am has to do with food and miskin is a poor person. I'll go into more detail with all these words just in a little later. Then it goes on, فَوَيْلٌ لِلْمُصَلِّينَ. Fa means when. Wail means curse or woe or destruction be on the musallin. Now, this is quite a strange verse because if you think somebody is a regular salah prayer, a regular musalli, as it were, how can destruction fall on him or her? Now, even that concept is explained in the next three ayah. That is, these are, so alladhina are like a plural, the musallis, plural is musallina. Those are the ones who, about their salah, they are sahun. Sahun means they are heedless or forgetful. They don't take it seriously. When they stand up for prayer, they stand up lazily. When they try and read, they don't even concentrate in their salah, and their mind is forgetful and going all over the show. So those are the kinds of people whose salah is categorized as, their prayer is said in a sort of heedless or forgetful state, without concentration and without khushu, which is the humility that you're supposed to have in salah. Then it says, Alladhina hum yura'una, and now it explains what kind of salah do these people pray. It is those who yura'una. Now this verb ra'a, we've come across it now for the third time. If you remember in Alam Tara Kayfa Fa'ala Rabbuka bi Ashabil Fil, the previous surah, Surah Quraysh, we had Alam Tara. Right? Just have you seen Kayfa, how Allah has dealt with the companions of the elephants, right? So in that previous surah, we had the word Ra'a. So Ra'a is the root. You can see the Ra, Alif, and a Hamza here. This is the root. No, actually, sorry. Ra, Hamza, and Ya. This particular one in the first ayah is the root word, the three main letters. And whenever we have an alif and a ya, those are regarded as weak letters in Arabic. So that's why when we had alam, tara, kaifa, these two weak letters fell away. That's why in the previous surah we had alam tara, have you not seen? Here it's ara'aita, uh, have you seen the one? This is like positive, right? Have you seen the one who denies the religion? And another form of this first form verb, which is the weak verb, is ra'a. There's an extra alif that comes in between the hamza and the ya at the end, and the ya fell away again. So yura'una is uh, the meaning of a third form verb, which is somebody who wants to be seen. In other words, he's ostentatious about his salah. He tries to read it so that people can see him and maybe comment about his piety, or he just wants to be seen when he goes to a sort of a public place, so like a masjid, where people must know he's arrived and he's there and he's reading perhaps in the front row or wherever, and people must observe him and notice him. So this is the kind of worshippers that we sometimes do find. Right? And what's another characteristic of this person who doesn't take his salah seriously is that he is yamna'un al ma'un. He not only doesn't practice it himself, but he prohibits. Mana'a, mamnu means forbidden, like, and mana'a means to forbid or discourage or not to encourage the even simple acts of kindness or simple acts of neighborliness. So this is the surah that we're going to look at in more detail now. So why we say that this particular surah has got partly revealed in Makkah and partly in Medina, because the line is drawn here as it were. Because if you look at this particular part of the surah, it's saying, have you not seen the one who denies or belies or doesn't acknowledge the religion or the day of judgment? And he's the one who shrugs off or pushes away the yatim, and he does not encourage the food of the or feeding or the giving of the food to the poor person. Now, this was a tray of some of the kuffar in Makkah at the time when the Prophet lived the first 10 years after the call, in other words, after the first revelation. So when he was 40, you remember he went to the cave of Hira and the revelation came of Iqra. And then the first 10 years he was asked to preach this faith, even though Salah was not made compulsory. In fact, it wasn't ordained at that time. So the first 10 years before the Isra or the Mi'raj that occurred, uh, Salah wasn't compulsory. So therefore, all these things, this first three ayah referred to a Meccan phase of the surah and the Meccan phase of the Prophet's life. Then we go on to, at the age of 50, the last 3 years when he was in Mecca were the very hard, difficult years, the boycott years when the kuffar of Mecca couldn't sort of get him back to believe like them as polytheists and believing in the idols of the day. Then they began this whole boycott of him and the few band of Sahaba that were around him. They were all reverts, all of them converted as a result of accepting the faith wholeheartedly. And it was such trying times, those 3 years, that some of them even migrated to Abyssinia at the time. And some of them that remained in Makkah were literally exiled from their homes and told to stay outside of Makkah in one community where there was a total boycott and onslaught against the small band of Muslims by the Quraysh of the day, who, in their magnitude and in their multitudes, all decided that they will not trade, no bartering, they won't sell bread, they won't give them food, nothing. whatsoever. There'll be no sort of relationship between the kuffar and the Muslims that were banished, as it were, away from the Makkah, a little distance, but they were kept in a community there and ostracized. And Allah, on that, in the first year of the boycott of 3 years, He then allowed, or He took Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam on the Isra or the Mi'raj, and he was given the bounty of Salah, which was made compulsory 5 times a day. And after it got this was ordained, people started reading Salah in single mode. Jama'ah wasn't like compulsory at the time. There was no mosque or any communal place of gathering in these boycott years. And it is only after the Hijrah that the first mosque of Quba and then later the Masjid al-Nabawi was built, and then people started congregating and reading Salah in congregation. So this first part relates to the kuffar and what their attitude was towards Islam in this nascent community or the burgeoning community of Muslims, which were very small and a handful. But essentially, the kuffar fell into this category of the yukarribu bid-din. They denied the religion, they didn't accept it, they even denied the day of judgment. And they did these two things, which is very, very horrible, because if you look at the Prophet himself, he was a yatim. And they treated the most noble of people in their midst as an orphan that they shrugged aside and didn't care about him and insulted him, swore him, ill-treated him to such an extent that they even called him a poet and a madman and all kinds of names. They used to throw the entrails of the camel onto his back while he was reading, performing any prayer in front of the Kaaba. So they were like intense enemies. They hated Islam with a passion, and they hated the Prophet Muhammad as well as his companions like that. And the onslaught was not only against the Prophet, but against all the Sahaba. We know the story of Bilal and how he said Ahad, Ahad, even in the scorching heat when he was dragged on the burning sands of Makkah. So that's the condition of the kuffar at this time. Now, what's amazing about this is the fact that if you look at Quraysh, the Surah Quraysh just before this, Quraysh was a surah revealed where Allah was reminding the Quraysh of the day to say, you are polytheists, but I'm reminding you that didn't we create Makkah or the Kaaba as a safe sanctuary for you? Did we not provide you with food and peace and security? Now, with all that blessing that you were given with, and the fact that you could trade, go to north and south, and with your trade caravans, and bring food and barter and exchange, and become an economic hub for the whole Arabian Peninsula, isn't that a benefit and a favor that you should have acknowledged? And in return, all you needed to do is ayah number 2, which is look at the yatim that you have, the orphans around you, and look after them, not despise them and shrug them away and push them aside and treat them the way you are doing. Because while you were given food and in ample amounts, what you are doing by being the wealthy Quraysh, you are not doing that to other downtrodden and oppressed people in Makkah, your other colleagues in other tribes and in your own families. Right? And then secondly, you're also not even encouraging the giving of the food to a miskin. فَوَيْلٌ لِلْمُصَلِّينَ. Then the verse changes to the post-Hijrah period, which is when people were in Medina now. They accepted Islam, but not everybody accepted it like with that same fervor and vigor as the Muhajirin did. And some of them kind of paid lip service to the beliefs of Islam. They were kind of two-minded, not really convinced. So when they used to come for Salah, they used to come like, half-heartedly. Their minds were not in the Salah. They used to come there, sometimes forgetting to read, or even if they read, they don't know what they read. And they used to just read like as if they were, if you look at chickens pecking on food, they would do salah of that type, where they would go down into ruku, sajda, quick, up, down, to such an extent that if you're looking at it from a distance, it's almost like fowls or chickens that are pecking at food. Now, if this was the condition of some of these people, their salah, that was very half-heartedly prayed, right? And then also some of them came to the Masjid Nabawi to be seen, to like kind of show off that they were there. It was something of ostentatiousness. And also they also prohibited or others from doing these basic acts of kindness, the few things that are encouraged as what neighbors would normally do. Now, I think you know some of the words already. Ra'a I have explained. And ra'a, this verb is also from that ra'a. To here, it's just to see, have you observed, have you noticed? And here, it's the ones who show off, who are being ostentatious about things. Right? Then we had the word Deen in Surah Fatiha, Maliki Yawmiddin, Master of the Day of Judgment or Master of the Day of Reckoning. Uh, now, فَذَلِكَ الَّذِي, now here it's like kind of, it's not saying هذا هو الذي يدعو اليتيم. He's saying فَذَلِكَ, it's like that is the one who, it's like distancing yourself from the person who's actually doing this criminal act of yadu ul yatim. Right? You know the word ta'am is to do with food, and miskin is to do with somebody who's poor. Wail, we mentioned that it's woe be or destruction be. Another meaning of wail is also one is it's a deep pit in the fire of Jahannam. In other words, imagine a fire that's engulfing those that are going to be inhabitants of Jahannam, but in it there's even a pit, a deeper pit inside that fire of Jahannam. So it's really a miserable place to be in, and we don't want to be there, and we need to take take caution out of this sort of almost not only insult, but it's like a real dire warning to us to say, don't be musallis of this sort who are disrespectful of the salah, and I'm sure you know the word sajda to sahu, where you make a mistake in your salah and you perform the extra sajda and salam. Now, sahu is the one, it's a sajda of forgetfulness. So sahun is from that same root, sahwa and sahun. Okay. All right. So that is essentially some of the words we've covered before, and we now know the meanings of. And I want to look at just some other dimensions of this particular surah. Now, the word plate, the word ma'un, which means a plate or a utensil or small aid or neighborly help. Now, this is a symbol of good-naturedness, as well as the fact that people are the basic humanity sort of is that you share what you have and look after the needs of others as well. Now, if you look at our strata in society, we have, in terms of a plate, we have people right on the top who have various crockery sets at home, and they have fridges and freezers full of food, and they are able to eat as much as and also as when they like. Right? So that's a strata that's like the more the wealthy type. But lower down, you get people who are perhaps have one set of crockery and some food, at least there's food on the table. Then you go a little lower down, you have people who sometimes have just maybe one plate and maybe one broken plate at that, and sometimes food and sometimes no food. And then right down, you get the lowest of the low who don't even have a plate and don't have any food. So, and those are the ones that we normally, we find them scrounging through dirt bins, looking for scraps of food to eat. So this is the way societies are, right? That there is the strata. Now, if you look at the time of the Prophet, during the time of this particular incident of the first year of the boycott, we have two people. Walid ibn Mughira was one of those who understood Arabic well. He was a kind of a poet of in his own right. He used to come and listen to the Quran being read, and he was actually convinced that this is a very good, uh, revelation. it's got a lot of meaning, it's got a lot of depth, and he was like kind of convinced that the Quran is something supernatural, something great. But when he met his companion Abu Jahl from another tribe and a leader of the other tribe, Abu Jahl was another staunch foe and enemy of Islam. He told Walid ibn Mughira that don't talk the way you're talking, that the Quran is so good and flawless and so beautiful, because you're going to cause disunity in the ranks of the Quraysh. And and Walid Mughira then succumbed to that Abu Jahl's thing, and then he said things contrary to what he really believed in. But the latest surah in surah, one of the, either in the 28th or 29th parah, there are a few verses referring to Walid ibn Mughira about how he was asked by the tribal leaders of the Quraysh to come and tell us whether the Quran is like a divinely revealed book and is it really a good book or is it a bad book. So what he did is he was at home and he walked up and down and he thought about it, and then he came out and he announced that no, it's not a good book and we shouldn't follow it. So he literally went against his conscience. But in any case, he never accepted Islam. His uh, his fate was also sealed with those few verses revealed, because he was not going to change his views on the Quran, although he was convinced that the Quran was a good and amazing book. The other enemy of Islam at the time before his conversion was Abu Sufyan. Now, Abu Sufyan, one day, he was a very wealthy Quraysh tribesman, and one day he slaughtered two camels and he was feeding everybody in his family and around, and a orphan came asking him for a little bit of that food of the camel. Now, imagine a camel being an animal as big as it is, and you slaughtered two, and you fed everybody, but he didn't have the heart to even say, "Oh, that here, this one small piece, you orphan, take it." Instead, he took a stick and he chased this orphan away. Now, this is essentially this reference in this first two ayah is, have you seen the one who denies the religion, which is Abu Sufyan in this case, right? Because he's the one who shrugged off the orphan. So Abu Sufyan at the time was not Muslim, and this was a reference to that incident in his life. But later on, he did convert. But whatever the case is, at this time, it was a serious act. Now, if you look at the surahs, there's the two before that we start, Surah Fil and Surah Quraysh. Surah Fil, Alam Tara Kaifa, was about that story about the arrogance of Abraham, the tribal leader from Yemen who tried to make his own place of worship and make Yemen the hub for economy for the whole Jazeera Arabia. Now, if you look at it, Yemen and where Makkah is, they are kind of like neighbors in a sense. Now, look at the arrogance of the man where he tried to overpower the Quraysh and the Arabs in the north. So there was a show of not only arrogance, but not good neighborliness. And this is what Surah al Ma'un is telling us about, that we should be, no matter where we are, how far apart we are, we should show an attitude of friendliness, kindness, and neighborliness to everybody around us. Then you look at Surah Quraysh. Surah Quraysh talked about the guarantee that Allah gave the Quraysh, that I've given you food and security. I've allowed your trade caravans to move north, south, whatever. I've given you ample food, right? But look at what you are doing now when you have the power. In other words, you've got the power because of the fact that the Kaaba is in your midst, and you've been made custodians over the Kaaba. And what's your attitude as the mighty and the powerful and the rich and the wealthy of uh, of the of the town of Mecca? When you get into power, is this how you treat orphans? Is this how you treat the poor? Now, this is an indictment on them to say, on the one hand, Allah has blessed you with so many favors, but what you do in return, yadu'ul yatim, yahuddu ala ta'amil miskin, yamna'un al-ma'un. You're doing these three sort of seriously bad things to the, the downtrodden and the oppressed. Then we look at Isra and Miraj. I think we've mentioned the fact that at the age of 40, in the last 3 years before the Prophet did the Hijrah, he was given the miracle of, or the blessing of reading Salah. And people read their Salah sort of singly at the time. And after the Hijrah, they started reading it in Jama'ah after the sort of the communities could be formed more easily in that sort of alien ground, but yet very accommodating group of people, the Ansar, who welcomed the Muslims open-handedly and shared everything they had. So things started changing once the Muslims, this small band, as well as those that went to Ethiopia, came back and made the hijrah uh, to Medina. Now, we have different words used. Kuffar is from the word kafara, means to disbelieve, so to disbelieve in one God, as it were. And the mushrik is one who makes shirk. Shirk is to worship multiple gods or multiple idols. So the kuffar slash mushrikun, the disbelievers, the atheists, as well as those that believed in polytheism of whatever sort, they were essentially the one group and the Muslims were the other group in the Meccan context. When we moved to Medina, you still had Kuffar Mushrikun there. You even had the Ahl al-Kitab, the Christians and the Jewish tribes that were there as well. In fact, there were Christians as well in Makkah at the time. But then you have a new group of people coming across, which is those that converted to Islam, but they were essentially at heart not totally Muslim. They were the munafiqun or the hypocrites. And characteristics of the hypocrites are explained in these last three ayahs. Now, the question arises, how should we treat the marginalized and the poor? If you look at this surah, it's not talking about, although it's talking to the Prophet and to us as the communities of Muslims and everybody else who reads the Quran in perpetuity, this is still valid, that no matter who you are, you should not shrug off the yatim, the orphan. And you notice the word orphan is not sort of given an adjective to say the Muslim orphan. This is orphan in general. In other words, it's not only about that you must care for Muslim orphans, you must care for all orphans. Right? Also, when you feed, it says Allah ta'amil miskin, just anybody who's poor is entitled to food. And also about how we pray, we shouldn't be heedless and careless about our salah. And also we should go there with humility and khushu and, uh, humbleness, as it were, when we stand on that musalla. And also, when it comes to neighborly needs, we must be able to give to the extent of our abilities. So I think today we've got poverty all around us. I mean, in South Africa, we have a case of, so many beggars at each of the street corners in all the major cities. Now, sometimes you think it's so overwhelming, and what can we do? Or what can I do as an individual? Now, the ayah is saying don't prohibit the, even this neighborly needs. In other words, you are encouraged to not only give the fish, in other words, the food for the day, or that little small coin that you're giving, or it could be a little packet of knickknacks or flings or whatever that you give by way of charity to those people who might not have had something to eat at the street corner. But I think more than that, we need a vision to give the rod. In other words, we need to get organized as a Muslim Ummah to the point that we find ways of setting up small sort of organizations that can help these people get out of the poverty they are in by giving them maybe housing, shelter, showing them skills, educating them to fend for themselves, to start off doing something that will be of benefit not only to themselves but to their families and to others around them. So our role as Muslims is not only to give to Muslim organizations, give to non-Muslim organizations as well, give to non-Muslim people as well. And by giving to all these different communities, you are showing what Islam really stands for and what it means to be a Muslim, being you're totally submitting to the will of Allah. The other thing about this word ad-din, this the total way of life, the religion, word in our lives. it will create such a revolution that we will never believe what it is like. In the sense that if you internalize the fact that every deed I do or every walk of life I'm embarking on, whether in my career, whether at home, if I have this consciousness about the day of reckoning, every word you say, you'll be careful of what you say or what you use. So lying, being dishonest, claiming that this thing is good, but whether it's not good, in a salesmanship relationship with clients in a shop, if you know goods are defective, you will tell the client, you know what, this thing is defective, but as is, if you want to still buy it, go ahead, this is the price. You don't hide things because by being dishonest in any way whatsoever, what we are actually doing is yukazibu bidin. We are going to become this category in ayah number 1, which is, have you seen the one who denies the day of judgment and the day of reckoning? Because, if we internalize a deen, this day of atonement, to be at that level where the God consciousness on our taqwa is such a level that we eradicate all forms of dishonesty in our lives, all our bad actions, our dealings with others, it will breed respect for people. If we have all these good qualities of the Prophet also, Alameen, As-Siddiq, and all the other, you know, the 99 names that are given to the Prophet, all those attributes, it's amazing that, he was the ideal example for us to follow in all walks of life. So I think starting with the deen, if we have that notion of what the Day of Atonement or Day of Retribution is about, it will cleanse us of all our evil deeds, it will make us lead better lives. It will become Ihdina Sirat al-Mustaqim for us. In other words, we will be guided onto the straight path, not those that went astray for whatever reasons. So our deeds, our actions, our hopes, aspirations, everything will be aligned to what Islam wants us to do and what Islam wants us to become. So this is the short message of this particular surah, that essentially be good, look after orphans. In fact, in one hadith, the Prophet ﷺ was reported to have said that anybody who looks after an orphan, and he put his two fingers together and he says, me and him will be like this on the day of judgment, close together. And so it's very, very meritorious to look after the orphans. This word, ta'amil miskin, I forgot to mention, like, ta'am means food. And it'am means the feeding of. Now, what this verse is actually telling us is not, he doesn't encourage the feeding of the poor. It's talking about, he doesn't encourage even the food. In other words, that food that the miskin is entitled to eat, even that little bit of food, he's not giving it over. And then also, he's not only giving it not to the poor, miskin is a singular form. Masakin means plural. So this person is so cruel that he doesn't do it himself, firstly, and wala yahuddu on top of it, he doesn't encourage others also to give what is the food of what is the entitlement of one poor person. So imagine around us, we've got so many people that are poor and so much need that's there. And we shouldn't be the ones that not only withhold our own charities from doing this good, because our zakah and sadaqah is very, very important. They are pillars of Islam. But not only must we give on time and give much and give a lot, but we should also ensure that what we give to everybody and uplift society and humanity at large. So I think that is the message for today. Sorry for the little hiccups we had in the beginning. I'll end at that point, but you can share some comments on the WhatsApp group. We'll end with reading of Al-Asr. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Al-Asr. إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر